Welcome back to Full Circle. I'm Hilary Doyle. While it is reasonable to think that AI is now absolutely everywhere, after all of the rapid growth and the big announcements, the majority of organizations are still playing on the sidelines. According to StatsCan, only 12% of firms in Canada used AI to make goods or deliver services in 2025. This year, that number is expected to more than double, but it still means a lot of businesses have yet to really jump in. Organizations seem stuck between experimenting with AI and understanding how to really implement it at scale. So, where are the most valuable opportunities for your business? As attention moves away from the possibility of AI to what it can, in fact, deliver, focus is shifting to infrastructure. For AI to operate, it needs chips, it needs data, networks, platforms, content, and that industry, technology, media, and telecom, or TMT, now makes up over 50% of the value of the S&P 500. As the home industry for AI, TMT is where competitive advantage is now being won, lost, and often overlooked. So, we want to investigate the TMT shifts and predictions that could give your business an advantage over the next 2 years. And to help us do that, we are joined by Duncan Stewart. He is the Director of TMT Research for Deloitte Canada. Thanks so much for being here, Duncan.
Thanks for having me on.
You co-wrote the Deloitte report on TMT predictions. So I want you to give us the narrative you see emerging for this sector at this stage in the AI evolution.
Just before I do that, you quoted a stat saying Canadian companies, about 12% of Canadian companies are really using AI at this point. And many people, Canadians, will sit there and go, oh no, we're losing the race. Everybody else is better than we are. No, that 12% number, which is probably higher this year, that number's very much in line globally. There are some places that might be a little ahead of Canada, some places a little behind. But on average, we are more or less where the rest of the world is. When you read the headlines, when you read the newspapers, when you look at the announcements about data centers being built around the world, it's tempting to think that AI is everywhere. Roughly 1 in 10 people around the world are daily users of AI tools, which means 9 out of 10 aren't. Roughly 12, 13, 14, 15% of companies are using AI, which means roughly 85% aren't. It's early days. This whole thing is 2 or 3 years old. Technologies take normally decades to get widely disseminated and widely adopted by both consumers and by businesses. And AI is faster than any technology has ever been adopted, but it still takes years. It's going to take time. People who do stuff with software, agentic AI and AI looks like it is ready for prime time. Everybody else is more cautious.
I mean, reading your report, I was surprised to learn that we're effectively moving past this experimentation phase in AI. But we still don't have a firm sense of how to scale it or really how to deliver the systems level solution. So I'm curious about what leaders should be looking to master in this interim period between the promise of AI and the real performance.
The phrase in the industry that we kick around a lot is something called pilot purgatory. I've got an application, I test it out, I use it in a very small, maybe it's 30 people, maybe it's 50 people, maybe it's 100. Revenues are a few $1 million, and I try it out and it goes, well, this works and it's got a positive ROI. It costs less than the value it delivers, and that's wonderful. Now let's take it across a $40 billion organization with 100,000 employees. And that's the problem. What should executives do? This is actually really simple. Number one, clean your data. Data management, data hygiene. You can do almost anything in a pilot with even slightly ugly data and it will still work. But the second you try taking it to scale, that will blow up in your face. Next, your IT processes. Within whatever part of your organization you did your pilot, you have 13 different IT processes that are relatively well understood. When you scale that out across the other 19 divisions in your company, everybody else has different IT processes and workflows, and getting AI to map to those is incredibly difficult, and that is the next challenge. Now, finally, the most important one. agentic AI, does not get rid of people. It is something that automates certain processes, but only alongside your human workforce. If, for example, I am a large global company that is doing AI for my invoicing, if I've created an agentic tool that turns around something that used to do in 2 weeks into 2 seconds, that is awesome. But if it then sits on a human being's desk for another 2 weeks, I have just lost the advantage. So, one, clean your data. Two, align your IT processes. Three, align both of those with your human processes because human beings are still in the loop. That is the single greatest challenge out there. This is all easily a 3 to 6 to 9 month process.
For anyone who just heard you say that and said, "That is not a 3 to 6 to 9-month process, that is a process I don't ever want to do." I mean, if you acknowledge that we're in a transition period, what is the risk to business of kind of sitting this out and waiting for the best solutions to emerge elsewhere?
Super unclear. About half the clients I talk to say it's an existential risk. If I don't do this, if I don't spend the money, if I don't get this right, I will not merely lose share and become less profitable. I will be gone in 2 years. The other half of my clients go, this agentic AI stuff is improving so rapidly that all of that stuff, that clean your data, that align your IT processes, that align with human, AI will figure all that out 17 months from now. For me to spend a lot of time and money now when the technology will get better, that is a legitimate debate out there. I don't think that there is a clear consensus yet, which is one of the reasons, by the way, why it's only at 15% of enterprises.
Duncan, let's talk about the future. You've said that agentic AI is really leading this next wave of innovation. I want to understand how leaders should be thinking about where and how to plug agentic into their org charts.
Everybody should be thinking about this. Whether you are going, I need to spend money and time on this today, the answer is yes, everybody should, literally 100%. Whether I should be spending a lot of money and time, that's the debate we just talked about. Whether this will matter within the next 24 months, we're back to the 100% number.
Specifically, this conversation around agentic and agentic in the org chart.
Agentic is the deep thinking, the multi-step, multi-model, actually does actions with or without human supervision, automates things. This is the thing that is new and different in the last 6 months to a year. Even from when we launched our predictions report back in November, it is now, April, May timeframe. In those 6-ish months, the world has changed. I have literally had to rip up half of my predictions, not because they were wrong, but because things that I thought would take 5 years took, in many cases, literally 5 weeks.
What's an example?
We made a prediction that by 2030, most of the software that we buy that traditionally has been enterprise license based or seat based would shift to some sort of hybrid pricing model where you would pay a fixed amount per person per month, but then the amount of AI compute you use, you would basically move to a usage based or consumption based model, pay what you eat. We predicted that that would occur in about half of companies by 2030. In fact, it's about 75% of companies by January. So the thing that we thought would take 5 years occurred in a few weeks after publication. If I am an enterprise in Canada, the way I buy, use, and pay for software has changed already, and it will change a lot more in coming weeks, months, and years.
Let's talk more about that because obviously subscriptions have slowed, growth rates have dropped. There have been rumors about the alleged SaaS apocalypse. What additional changes should we anticipate and plan for in this space?
Nobody is going out and writing their own system of record software stack. So from that level, that part will probably not change in the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years. Where it gets more interesting is that there are a number of SaaS companies out there that are creating their own agentic modules. And they want their customers to buy those and they want to charge for that. And they want you to use their tools and not somebody else's tools. Meanwhile, there's a whole bunch of new agentic AI companies that are creating their own agentic modules and they want you to buy theirs instead of the existing SaaS vendors. And here's the critical bit. Many companies are discovering that I will keep my system of record, but I can actually write using my own tools or publicly available tools for not very much money and not very much time. I can write my own agentic application that sits on top of that system of record stack that does what the module from the vendor does, but at much lower cost and much higher efficiency and much higher customization because I wrote it myself. That third thing, that build your own, roll your own, develop your own agentic AI is the single biggest new factor.
Is there anything that distinguishes the businesses that have really figured out how to mine value from AI at this stage?
They're fairly obviously technology, especially software centric, is among the leading adopters of this. So, tech, software for sure, tech hardware and semiconductor definitely. Telecom would be only just behind that. Banking and financial services would be probably just behind that. Manufacturing, surprisingly, is in fact getting into this. I was a little startled by that. Other things, government is moving a little more slowly. Education is moving a little more slowly. In healthcare, we are seeing tremendous application of AI to help doctors and nurses chart and document patient care much better. This is one of the killer use cases out there, and it is being widely adopted. Meanwhile, other parts of healthcare are moving quite slowly.
How long are you thinking we have before AI is just naturally integrated into every business operating system out there? Is it 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Do we not even understand what's coming?
First of all, nobody understands what's coming. I came up with a spend estimate on how much we were going to spend on data centers this year. On November 18th, I thought it was 4 to 450 billion. My new number's 1.1 trillion. Okay, like nobody knows this stuff is moving so fast. It's crazy. But I hear your question. 3 years.
3 years.
And it could be 1.5, it could be 2.2, it could be 3 and a bit. But basically, when we said last year there was a gap, when we said this year the gap is narrowed, I am willing to be on this call right now and say the gap is gone 3 years from now.
So then for the businesses that are looking at that 3-year timeline and want to get as far ahead as they can in the meantime, what are the TMT level infrastructure investments that they need to be making right now?
Okay, I'm gonna answer your question as precisely as I can. I am a leading company either in TMT or bluntly outside of it. I have a really cool idea. I do that idea, I test that idea, I build that idea probably in the hyperscaler cloud. I go to one of the very big 4, 5-ish companies out there, and I use what are called frontier models, and I test it out and I build my agentic AI app for my finance department. And then I go, okay, that's great. I need to start scaling this. And I do more and more in the cloud. And my CFO shows up and goes, oh my gosh, you're spending a lot of money in the cloud. Wouldn't it make sense for us to move this on-prem, to buy a box for hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions of dollars, stick it in our basement and start doing some of our stuff still in the cloud, some of our stuff in a cheaper cloud, and some of our stuff in our basement. And that tipping point, that logic is called frequently tokenomics. The idea is that as I use more and more of these tokens in the cloud, it costs more and more money. At some point, it makes sense to bring that in-house. Not every company is having this conversation at the same pace. Some companies literally have bought these boxes and stuck them in their basement last year. Some smaller, usually, if you're under $1 billion, you may never reach that tipping point where it makes sense to bring it in house.
Your report is projecting that the running of AI models, known as inference, is going to make up about two-thirds of AI compute in 2026. Obviously, that is a tremendous amount of energy, and that's before this 3-year look ahead that you've given us. How should business at the individual level be contingency planning for sustainability?
We thought it would be two-thirds. Based on the most recent data that I can find, I think it's somewhere between 75, 80, or even 85% of all compute is now inference. Now, that inference has an energy profile. Most of that inference in 2026 and 2027 will still be done in large hyperscale data centers, which will need lots and lots, gigawatts globally, of energy. In good news, that is actually less of a problem in 26 than it was last year. When you are training these models, you need to have all of your racks and trays and clusters and computers located as close to each other as is physically possible. You want to minimize latency as you are training these very, very large models. In a world where inference is two-thirds, 70, 75, 85% of compute workload, you can actually distribute those data centers. And Canadian shout out here, you could actually put them, for example, instead of locating them all in Virginia or Texas, you could start putting them in northern BC or northern Quebec, where one, you've got land, two, you've got water, three, you've got usually renewable or low carbon power, and four, you can open the windows in winter. The story in 2025 was we were trying to bring power to data centers. In 2026, we are bringing data centers to where there is power.
We can't talk about data centers without discussing chips. Sovereignty is the interest of the moment. Is sovereign AI even possible for Canada without a homegrown chip industry?
I was asked this question in Malaysia. So I need to take a step back. Around the world, about 90% of all AI compute is currently owned by the US and China, which is great if you are American or Chinese. If you are not American or Chinese, there are certainly people saying things like, we probably shouldn't put our, I don't know, defense capabilities on a server in a different country. That feels like a bad idea. And there is therefore this giant push to create about $100 billion of what are called sovereign AI data centers. These are most frequently built by telcos. They don't have to be, it just happens to work that way. But here in Canada, two of our three major carriers are building sovereign Canadian AI data centers. If we spend this year about $100 billion on sovereign AI, and we will, and if we spend about $1 trillion on total AI data centers, that means sovereign AI is roughly 10% of spending, which means that if you are not American and not Chinese, we are going from a world in 2025 where we were about 10% sovereign, and in 2026, we'll spend $100 billion in order to be about 10% sovereign. In a world of hyperscalers spending hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, we need to spend this money only in order to stay kind of where we are. But now, Hilary, to your exact question. If you're building a physical AI data center in Canada, but it runs on American or Chinese chips running American or Chinese models, you're really not all that sovereign, but you're about as sovereign as you're going to get. There is no way that Canada, Sweden, or Turkey or Singapore is going to be building the advanced AI chips that are found in those data centers. That's simply not going to happen. Equally, the very, very large models out there, maybe there'll be a Canadian player, maybe there'll be a French player, maybe there won't. Everybody who is not the US and not China, we are almost certainly 3 or 4 years from now going to be owning, if we're lucky, data centers that are in our country, but the chips and the models are still largely going to be foreign. There's just almost no way out of that.
What is the most critical TMT bottleneck you're watching right now when it comes to supply chain impact?
There's two going on at the same time from the same cause. Last year, the big hyperscalers were building data centers, and they spent about 10% of that of their spending was on advanced memory. That number is going to 30% this year. So memory is the first one. The second one is last year, all of those AI chips they were building were actually not built at the leading edge node. That's that 2 nanometer, 3 nanometer manufacturing. Instead, it was built on 4 and 5. Unfortunately, in 2026, all of the new chips are now at 2 nanometer, 3 nanometer. And that means that there is this incredible double whammy on the semiconductor supply chains. If I am, and I'm going to talk about not an AI person, not even a data center person, just the average consumer listening to this. If I have a phone, inside my phone, I need memory. And it's not available, and it costs 4 to 10 times as much as it did last year. And I need a CPU, and it's not available, and it costs 3, 4, 5 times as much. And that's true of smartphones. That's true of computers. That's true of the racks that go into non AI data centers. Prices are up, supply chains are stretched to the point of snapping. All of this means that smartphone sales will decline this year, PC sales will decline this year in unit terms. Data centers that are non AI will struggle to get replacement parts, waiting months or even years. And now comes the bad news. In the past, when we've had this kind of supply chain disruption, the answer was, I will go build a new memory plant. Memory plants these days cost ballpark $24 billion dollars. From the first shovel in the ground to the first memory wafer out takes 3 years, but that's just the first one and it's probably no good. To actual capacity takes 5 years. Meanwhile, building these advanced node 2 and 3 nanometer plants takes almost as much time and almost as much money, meaning that the shortage we're in not only is severe and bad for both consumers and enterprises, it's going to stay bad for at least 1 to 2 years and probably three.
So is there anything that business can do to buffer itself or build around the chokehold?
Nope. I know that sounds like a relatively short answer, but this is a true story. So I was in Denmark and this guy was building non AI data centers. And he said, I can't get solid state drives, the electronic version of memory for my data center. And I went, oh no, that's a problem. Oh, well, at least I can always go out and buy hard disk drives. Nope. Those are sold out for 12 to 18 months as well. So, all of the kind of contingencies that I would have, I mean, what can you do? You can keep your phones and computers longer. You can not deploy new technologies because they're unaffordable. You can let bits of your data center stop working because you can't get replacement parts. That's not a contingency plan. That's just a reality of what's going to happen next.
We like to leave our listeners with practical takeaways that they can put into practice within the next quarter. You've already given us a handful, but I have 3 final questions for you. Your look ahead, as we said, has suggested we're moving away from the big AI announcements to really extracting value from what's already been announced. Where would you recommend leaders look for undiscovered or unexplored value in their current TMT orchestrations?
Software. That's my answer. Just start and end with software. Take a look at your organization, where you use, where you buy, where you could use software. That's where your focus should be. Yes, customer service, sure, marketing, but those are one of these things in the room is 1,000 times bigger than the other things.
Okay, but, you've talked about how AI in search is currently the most widely used implementation of AI. What are we missing here? What do you see as the most valuable opportunity for business when it comes to AI and TMT writ large?
We are seeing a lot of companies that you would have thought were each other's nemesis, rivals, enemies beyond compare, who the day after are now partnering. We are seeing a lot of that. I think for a variety of reasons, we are going to see a lot more flexibility and strategic thinking around making partnerships on very much an opportunistic basis. Just because I don't compete with you here doesn't mean I can't cooperate with you there. That kind of strategic flexibility that has been talked about here in Canada seems to be actually the new normal inside of TMT and AI.
I suspect that your answer to this final question is going to be software. But what is the one TMT investment that you'd counsel every leader then to make in the next 3 months to really set them up for the future as you see it?
It actually, this time it's not software, it's about infrastructure. On your roadmap, you need to have a here's what we're doing now in the cloud. At some point, we are going to need to bring some part of that on-prem. Do we know how to do that? Do we have money for that? Do we have the talent for that? Do we know how to maintain and upgrade that? Having that roadmap towards a hybrid model is probably everybody knows about software. Not everybody is yet anticipating that crossover to on-prem.
Greatest predictor in the business. Duncan, thank you so much for making time to be here.
Thank you, Hilary.
Duncan Stewart will be the first to tell you nobody fully understands how quickly this is moving. Technologies expected to take years are arriving in months and, in some cases, weeks. And while roughly 85% of organizations are still watching and waiting, no matter when you decide to jump in, the challenge will continue to rest in how to scale AI across systems, workflows, infrastructure, and people that were never designed for this pace of change. For now, many businesses are letting early movers test the expensive trial and error, but the TMT ecosystem underneath us all is evolving quickly. Software vendors, cloud providers, tech platforms, they're all integrating AI into the systems that businesses already rely on every day. So that's reshaping everything from cost structures to corporate agency. And the takeaway for leaders here is not to chase every new AI tool, it's to prepare your organization to operationalize AI at scale whenever you're ready. As Duncan recommended, clean your data, align your IT workflows, align your human processes. Is it possible that AI will be able to automate all of this for you in 18 months? Yes, of course. That's the world we're living in. But as Duncan Stewart makes clear, TMT is fast becoming the backbone of competitive advantage, and organizations now have a really short window to adapt. My thanks again to Duncan Stewart, and thanks as always to you for listening. Connect with us anytime at Full Circle at Deloitte.ca. We'll see you next time.